you know, the first vines were planted in Napa Valley in about 1838 by George C. Yount in Yountville, where we were at, not on that particular site, but in Yountville. So vines have been pretty much the staple wine grape varieties of Napa Valley for many, many years, 150, 170 years. And we continue to farm wine grapes in the Napa Valley. There has been cherries, there has been a lot of walnuts planted at one time, a lot of prunes, to name some of the crops. But the heart and soul of Napa Valley is wine grapes. And of course, olives is another commodity that is grown here. These were planted on the perimeter. There are 4 different Italian varieties made for olive oil. And we could talk about that a little bit later. Some people still grow other commodities. I take care of a peach orchard, for example. I take care of some other landscape projects. So it's not 100% wine grapes. There are other things. The other uniqueness of Napa Valley, unlike, let's say, the Central Valley of California, is that we have a lot of microclimates here. A lot of variation in our soils, in our climates. And then when you get into specific vineyards, you have mesoclimates. What is actually affecting that vineyard more so than the neighbor's vineyard? I mean, it could be something nuanced like a house or a hillside or something that affects the vineyard. In other words, we have this hillside right here to our east that brings down the cool air, but you can go down here a quarter mile and they don't feel the same thing that we feel right here. Of course, today everybody's feeling the same, but in the summertime, what I'm trying to say is, or the hills as we pass in Yountville, those hills are there for a reason. And they create these micro or mesoclimates, if you will. And then we have the 14 AVAs of Napa County. That's the appellations that have been designated in Napa County. We're now in the Rutherford appellation, whereas we passed through Oakville when we left the Yountville vineyard. So they're not large appellations, but they have their distinct uniqueness to them. So now I'll talk about this vineyard here. This vineyard I've been very much involved with from the get-go, and there was a huge soil study done here back in 2000. And the soils report says we should be planting the rows in this direction more or less, but we should be using about 5 or 6 different rootstocks because of the inconsistencies of the soils that were found through all these backhoe pits. And a backhoe pit is, excuse me, literally digging with a backhoe 6 feet deep and looking at the profile, seeing where all the different layers arise, if it's clay, gravel, silt, and all that. But the decision was not to plant all these different rootstocks, but to plant one rootstock because we had one significant pest that was in this vineyard that we would never be able to eliminate, and that's Xiphinema index nematode. We could have planted all those other rootstocks, but the vineyard may have only lasted maybe 9 or 10 years at best before it became infected with the disease grapevine family. So we said we're going to go with the only rootstock we know that was designed to combat that nematode and not spread fan leaf. And that's what we have here. Now, knowing these soils, and this goes again as a manager, we started off on this east side of the vineyard 4 foot between our vines. Okay, there's a 4 foot spacing here. About halfway down, or a third of the way down, we opened them up to 5 foot because the soils are a little bit deeper, a little bit more fertile, a little bit more richer. Then at the far end, we went to 6 foot spacing to take care of the more deeper soils that were found, the more fertile soils that were found at the far end. Consequently, when we did that, we also put in 3 irrigation systems. And why that is because this side needs water, that side doesn't need water when it comes time to irrigate. So if we're going to be proactive in our management and micromanage the vineyard, we're going to want to have irrigation systems designed to do what we want to do and not take it for granted that this vine needs as much water as the one down there at the far end. The other thing is, as we put in this vineyard over a number of years, there's actually 5 selections of Cabernet. We're standing in the selection 337. There's some selection 15 or clone 15 in this block, clone 6, clone 29, and clone 7 at the far end. So again, as the wines are put together, if you will, or all the grapes are picked together, it's a unique blend from this particular vineyard. And part of the goal of planting our 4-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot spacing was we wanted to be able to pick the fruit from this end and that end at the same time. So these vines, because again, the shallow soils, the rockier nature of the soils, were not going to lend themselves to big, strong monster vines like the other end. So we tried to get uniformity within the vineyard so we had true balance within the vines. And later on in the season, if you ever want to come back, give me a call and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about throughout this whole vineyard. And because when the original vineyard was here, we'd pick here, we'd wait a week, go pick in the middle, wait another week, go pick down there, because everything was uniform by spacing and by vine density and irrigation system. If we picked it all at one time, it never made great wine. It made wine, but never great premium Cabernet. So again, putting forethought into those management decisions, well, here's our knowns, let's work with our knowns and work from there.